Imagine this moment. You're living an ordinary life, surrounded by familiar faces, traditions, and rituals. But then, a voice breaks through the noise. A voice more powerful than any storm, clearer than words spoken aloud. Leave your native land, in your father's house, and go to... This is not a voice anyone else can hear, but it resonates deep within you, a divine call that transforms everything. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. And through you, all the peoples of the earth will be blessed. For Abraham, born in Ur of the Chaldeans, a bustling city where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers brought life to the land, this moment must have felt like a complete break from everything he knew. His father Terah was respected, but their lives were bound by the rituals of a polytheistic world. And yet, the divine voice spoke, challenging everything he had known. The words were not only a call to leave, but a promise so vast that it stretched into eternity. Tell me, Abraham must have wandered beneath the stars. The night sky seemed as infinite as the promise that lay ahead. This is the beginning of a journey that would change everything. Not just for Abraham, but for all of humanity. And it starts. As we dive into this story, let's explore how Abraham's obedience to this divine call would lead to blessings far beyond his imagination. Stay tuned as we continue this incredible journey of faith, courage, and destiny. At the age of 75, Abraham embarked on a life-altering journey, choosing to confront his fears and embrace a new path. "We're leaving," he declared to Sarah, his wife. "Where to?" she asked, concern reflecting in her eyes. "To the land the Lord will show us," he replied, filled with unwavering resolve and a heart full of hope and faith. Obeying the Lord's call, he departed with Sarah, his nephew Lot, and all their possessions, heading toward Canaan. The road ahead was uncertain, but the divine promise guided their steps. They crossed Haran and eventually reached Canaan, a land of rolling hills and fertile valleys. The Canaanites lived there in fortified cities, each ruled by its own king. Abraham journeyed through the land, finally arriving in Shechem, under the great oak of Morah, where the Lord appeared to him once more and said, "To your descendants I will give this land." Moved by this divine declaration, Abraham built an altar and offered a prayer to the Lord. However, the promised land soon grew hostile. A severe famine swept through Canaan, turning the fertile land into dust. Livestock perished and provisions became scarce. One night, Abraham lifted his eyes toward the heavens, asking, "Why have you brought us here?" Yet, the silence that followed provided no answer. With a heavy heart, Abraham 12 made a decision. "We will go to Egypt," he said. Sarah, concerned, questioned him, "And what about the Lord's promise?" Abraham, concealing his doubts behind a determined look, replied, "We must survive." Made a decision. "We will go to Egypt," he said. Sarah, concerned, questioned him. "And what about the Lord's promise?" Abraham, concealing his doubts behind a determined look, replied, "We must survive." The journey to Egypt would be perilous, but staying meant certain death. Amid the starry sky, a voice resonated deeply within Abraham's mind. "Do not fear, Abraham. I am your shield. Your reward will be immense." Although these words filled Abraham's heart with hope, fear still lingered within him. He deeply loved Sarah, his beloved wife, and feared for her safety in the unfamiliar lands they were about to enter. He had to protect her at all costs. As they approached Egypt, Abraham stopped and turned to Sarah, saying, "I know you are a beautiful woman. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'She is his wife,' and they will kill me to take you. Please tell them you are my sister." Sarah, understanding upon entering Egypt, as Abraham had feared, every eye turned towards Sarah's breathtaking beauty. The Egyptians brought her to Pharaoh's palace, and in return, Abraham was gifted sheep, cattle, but their joy was short-lived. Mysterious plague suddenly struck Pharaoh's household, causing chaos and despair. Furious and confused, Pharaoh confronted Abraham. "What have you done to me? Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Because of your deception, I have been struck by curses. Take your wife and leave my land." Embarrassed yet relieved, Abraham departed Egypt with Sarah and all their belongings. As they journeyed back to Canaan, he reflected on the events that had unfolded, thinking to himself, "The Lord is indeed a shield and a guide in times of uncertainty." Upon returning to Canaan, Abraham, Sarah, and Lot faced a new challenge. Their flocks and wealth had grown so large that the land could no longer support them all. Quarrels broke out between their herders, and tensions rose within the family. In the midst of this strife, Abraham approached Lot calmly, saying, "Let there be no strife between you and me, or between our herdsmen, for we are kin. Look at all the land before us. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left." Lot gazed upon the fertile Jordan Valley, as lush and abundant as the Garden of Eden, and eagerly chose it for himself. "I will choose the Jordan Valley," he declared. So they parted ways. Lot settled near Sodom, a city known for its wickedness, while Abraham remained in Canaan. That night the Lord spoke to Abraham again, saying, "Raise your eyes and look. Look around from where you are, to the north and south, to the east and west. All the land that you see, I will give to you and your descendants forever." Moved by this promise, Abraham built another altar to honor the Lord. Despite facing challenges and difficult decisions, Abraham's faith grew stronger with each test. Through every trial, he knew that he was not alone. On the plains near Sodom, Lot began to witness the dire consequences of his earlier decisions. The once prosperous land now lay under a shadow of corruption, and danger loomed closer with every passing day. Lot was unaware of the imminent destruction until one day, under the shade of the oaks of Mamre, he saw 3 men approaching him. Without hesitation, he rushed to meet them and bowed down low in respect. "My lord," Lot said urgently, "if I have found favor in your eyes, please do not pass by your servant. Let me bring you some water so you can wash your feet and rest under this tree. Let me get you something to eat so you can refresh yourselves before you go." The men, who were messengers from God, agreed. "Very well," they said, "do as you say." With haste, Lot ran into his tent, instructing Sarah to take the finest flour, knead it, and bake some bread. Then he went to the herd, selected the best calf, and gave it to a servant. As the meal was being prepared, Abraham stood near the men under the tree, waiting for them to eat. One of the men then asked, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" Lot answered, "She is there in the tent." Then, with authority, one of the men declared, "I will return to you about this time next year, and by then Sarah will have a son." Sarah, overhearing the conversation from inside the tent, couldn't help but laugh silently to herself. "Will I really have this joy now that I'm worn out and my husband is old?" she thought. The Lord then spoke to Abraham. Does she doubt that she can have a child in her old age? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time I will return to you, and Sarah will have a son." The promise echoed with power in the air, as if the heavens themselves were affirming it. After the meal, the 3 men got up and looked towards Sodom. Abraham walked with them to see them off, but before they left, the Lord shared his plans with Abraham. The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sins so grievous, that I will go down to see if their actions are as wicked as the outcry that has. Abraham, knowing the wickedness of the cities and concerned for the righteous, pleaded anxiously, "Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Suppose there are 50 righteous people in the city. Will you really destroy it and not spare the place for the sake of—" The Lord responded with mercy, "If I find 50 righteous people in Sodom, I will spare the entire city for their sake." But Abraham, feeling humble before the Lord, responded, "Though I am but dust and ashes, I have dared to speak." He persisted, "What if only 10 can be found there?" The Lord concluded, "For the sake of the 10, I will not destroy it." Abraham, his heart still heavy with fear, watched the men depart. As they continued their journey, back in the city of Sodom, Lot continued his daily life, unaware of the great danger that had arrived. That night, 2 angels came to the city gates, and Lot, seeing them, immediately rose and approached them. "Please, my lords," Lot pleaded with urgency, "come to your servant's house to spend the night. You can wash your feet, and in the morning you can continue on your way." The angels replied, "No, we'll spend the night in the square." However, Lot insisted so strongly that they finally agreed and went with him to his house. Lot then prepared a feast for them, baking unleavened bread, and together they shared the meal. But their peace was soon disrupted. A mob surrounded the house, shouting in anger, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us." Lot stepped outside, closing the door behind him, and begged, "Please, my brothers, don't do this wicked thing." But the crowd responded fiercely, "Get out of our way. This foreigner came to live among us, and now he wants to judge us. We'll treat you worse than them." The mob lunged toward Lot. In that moment, the angels intervened, striking the men outside with blindness. The mob could no longer find the entrance, confusion filling their ranks. The angels turned to Lot and said, "Is there anyone else here with you? Get your family out of this place, for we are about to destroy it. The outcry against its people has reached the Lord, and he has sent us to wipe." Lot immediately went to warn his family. "Hurry, leave this place at once," he urged them. "The Lord is going to destroy the city." But his family did not believe him. The angels pressed him further. "Quickly take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, or you'll be swept away when the city is punished." Lot hesitated, but the angels grabbed his hand and with mercy led him, his wife and daughter. Once outside, the angels gave a final command. "Run for your lives. Don't look back or stop anywhere in the valley. Escape to the mountains, or you'll be destroyed." They fled toward Zoar, and as dawn broke, the sun began to rise. The Lord rained down burning sulfur from the heavens, destroying Sodom, Gomorrah, and the entire plain, leaving nothing but ash. But as they ran, Lot's wife, despite the warning, looked back at the burning city. In that moment, she was turned into a pillar. The Lord had spoken, and his judgment had come. Yet Lot and his daughters were spared because of Abraham's plea and God's mercy. As Lot gazed back at the destruction, his heart was heavy, but he was alive. A reminder that God's promises, though they may seem far off, are always faithful. As dawn broke, just a few miles away from the devastation, Abraham returned to the place where he had stood with the Lord, gazing toward the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. A heavy weight settled upon his heart as he saw thick smoke rising, thick and black, like the smoke of a furnace. The sight sent a shiver through his body, and in that moment he realized the full extent of what had just occurred. The cities had been judged, and the destruction was irreversible. Yet, even in the midst of such devastation, the Lord remained faithful to his promise to Abraham. He remembered Abraham's plea for Lot, and as a result, Lot was spared from the wrath that had consumed the cities. The scene before Abraham was a powerful reminder of the consequences of sin, and the importance of following God's commands. Abraham, with a heavy heart, moved to the region of the Negev, living as a foreigner in Gerar. Once again, he found himself in a situation where he feared for his life. Introducing his wife Sarah as his sister once more, Abraham tried to protect himself from potential harm. This led to a series of events involving Abimelech, the king of Gerar, who, upon hearing that Sarah was Abraham's sister, sent for her and took her into his care. That night, God appeared to Abimelech in a dream, warning him with the words, "You are as good as dead because of the woman you have taken. She is a married woman." Startled and confused, Abimelech pleaded with the Lord, "Lord, would you destroy an innocent nation? Didn't Abraham tell me she was his sister? Didn't she also confirm that he was her brother? I have acted with integrity, and my hands are clean." God, recognizing Abimelech's honesty and lack of malice, responded, "I recognize your integrity. That's why I prevented you from sinning against me. Now return the woman to her husband. He is a prophet, and he will pray for you so that you will live. But if you do not return her, be assured that you will surely die, you and all who belong to you." At dawn, Abimelech wasted no time. He gathered his servants and shared everything that had happened. The news filled the servants with fear. Abimelech then summoned Abraham, filled with both anguish and frustration, and demanded to know, "How have I wronged you, that you have brought such a great offense upon me and my kingdom? You have done things to me that should never be done." Abraham, though initially surprised by the king's anger, responded calmly, "I thought there was no fear of God in this place, and they would kill me because of my wife. Besides, she really is my sister, the daughter of my father, though not of my mother, and she became my wife. So when God had me leave my father's household, I said to her, 'This is the kindness you must do for me. Wherever we go, say of me, he is.'" Abimelech, understanding the situation, took sheep, cattle, male and female servants, and gave them all to Abraham. He also returned Sarah to him, acknowledging her as Abraham's wife. "My land is before you," Abimelech said. "Live wherever you please." Despite the tension of the situation, after this encounter, the Lord visited Abraham and Sarah in a miraculous way, fulfilling his promise in a way far beyond what they could have imagined. In their old age, Sarah conceived and bore a son, just as God had promised. Abraham named the child Isaac in obedience to the divine instruction. Overcome with joy, Sarah exclaimed, "God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me." Her heart was filled with joy and wonder, for she had witnessed the faithfulness of God in a way that no one could have predicted. The laughter of joy that filled their hearts was a testament to the fulfillment of God's promises, which had seemed impossible to them at first. On the 8th day after Isaac's birth, Abraham, now 100 years old, faithfully circumcised his son in obedience to God's command. Isaac's birth was a living testament to the power and faithfulness of the Lord. On the day Isaac was weaned, Abraham prepared a grand. However, in the midst of the celebration, Sarah noticed Ishmael, the son of Hagar, mocking Isaac. "So you're the chosen one," Ishmael sneered. Isaac, confused and unaware, looked back at him with a stern expression. Sarah, angered by this, approached Abraham and said, "Drive out this slave woman and her son, for the son of this slave will not share the inheritance with my son Isaac." Surprised by Sarah's forceful response, Abraham frowned, deeply. "What are you saying?" he asked. "Ishmael is also my son." But Sarah, with a fierce determination in her eyes, declared, "I won't allow that woman and her son to endanger Isaac." Silence fell between them. That night, restless, Abraham stepped out of his tent, gazing at the vast starry sky above him. In the quiet stillness, a gentle yet firm voice echoed within him. Do not be distressed about the boy or your maidservant. Listen to all that Sarah tells you, for through Isaac your descendants shall be named. Yet I will also make a nation of the maidservant's son, because he is your offspring." At dawn, with a heavy heart, Abraham took bread and a skin of water and went to Hagar's tent. He spoke gently, "You must leave." Hagar, stunned and filled with disbelief, asked, "Leave? To where? Into the desert?" Abraham, avoiding her gaze, responded, "God will be with you." Hagar, her voice filled with pain, protested, "This is how you send us away?" Abraham, in sorrow, affirmed, "It has to be." With tears in her eyes, Hagar took Ishmael's hand, and they departed. The desert stretched endlessly before them, a vast, unforgiving wilderness. The heat was unbearable, and the water from the skin soon ran out. Ishmael, weak and dehydrated, collapsed on the ground. "Mother, I can't go on," he whispered. Hagar, helpless, laid Ishmael under a shrub and walked a few steps away, her heart breaking as she could not bear to watch her sons suffer. She cried out in anguish, "My God, why?" Then a voice from heaven spoke softly to her. "What's troubling you, Hagar? Do not fear, for God has heard the boy's voice. Rise, lift up the boy and hold him with your hand, for I will make him a great nation." Surprised and filled with renewed hope, Hagar opened her eyes and saw a well of water that had not been there before. She hurried to fill the skin and gave Ishmael a drink, and as the water touched his lips, life returned. At that time, King Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, approached Abraham with a serious request. "God is obviously with you in all that you do," they said. "So swear to us here before God that you will not deceive us or our descendants. Just as we have shown loyalty to you, so you will show loyalty to us and to the land where you've resided." With a calm but firm response, one day, however, God decided to test Abraham's faith in a way no father could ever imagine. The Lord called out, "Here I am," and Abraham, always attentive, immediately responded. Then came the command that would shake his heart to its core. "Take your only son, Isaac, whom you love so dearly, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there. As a burnt offering on a mountain, I will show you." Abraham's heart was overwhelmed with a whirlwind of emotions. "How can this be?" he thought. "Isaac is the son of the promise. Despite this storm of fear and confusion, his unwavering faith drove him forward." At dawn the next day, Abraham rose early, determined and resolute. "Prepare the donkey, we leave at sunrise," he commanded. Taking his beloved son Isaac by the hand, the two set out on their journey to the place God had shown. After 3 long days of travel, Abraham finally saw the mountain in the distance. Turning to his servants, he said, "Stay here with the donkey. The boy and I will go over there to worship, and then we will return to you." With great care, Abraham placed the wood on Isaac's shoulders, while he himself carried the fire and the knife. They walked side by side in silence until Isaac broke it. "Father, what is it, my son?" Abraham answered, "We have the fire and the wood." Isaac, noticing the missing sacrifice, asked, "But where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Holding back his own emotions, Abraham reassured him, "God will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." When they arrived at the appointed place, Abraham began to build the altar. Every movement, though necessary, was filled with an inner battle. As he arranged the wood, his heart ached. Turning to Isaac with tears threatening to fall, he bound his son, who, startled and confused, cried out, "Father, what are you doing?" Abraham, voice shaking, whispered, "God has asked this of me. Trust in him." Abraham raised his hand with the knife, ready to follow through, when suddenly a voice rang out from heaven. "Abraham! Abraham!" Startled, Abraham froze in place and responded, "Here I am." The voice continued, "Do not lay a hand on the boy, or now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld your son from me." With a rush of relief, Abraham dropped the knife, and without hesitation he untied Isaac and held him close. "Father," Isaac said softly, his eyes filled with wonder and tears, "God is merciful." At that moment, Abraham looked around and saw a ram caught by its horns in a thicket. Without a second thought, he took the ram and offered it as a burnt offering in place of his son. Then the angel of the Lord called to Abraham once again, saying, "I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you. This was done. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Your offspring will conquer the cities of their enemies, and through them all nations on earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed me." With tears still in his eyes, Abraham embraced Isaac tightly and said, "Let's go home." Sometime later, a devastating blow struck Abraham's life. His beloved wife Sarah had passed away at the age of 127. The grief he felt was profound, a deep ache that echoed through every part of his being. Yet he knew what he had to do. He needed to give Sarah a proper place of rest, a worthy resting place that would honor her and the life they had shared. With heavy heart, he journeyed to the city of Hebron, where he approached the Hittites to secure a burial site. "I am a foreigner among you," he declared to the sons of Heth. "Grant me ownership of a burial site so I can lay my wife to rest." The sons of Heth responded, "Hear us, my lord. You are a prince of God among us. Bury your dead in the finest of our tombs. None of us will withhold his tomb from you to bury your wife." But Abraham, ever resolute, insisted, "Allow me to purchase the cave of Melah that belongs to Ephron." Ephron, who was present among the people, responded, "My lord, I give it to you, the cave and the fields surrounding it." But Abraham did not accept this generous offer without hesitation. "No," Abraham said firmly, "I will pay the fair price." Ephron, hearing this, said, "My lord, listen to me. The land is worth 400 pieces of silver, but what is that between you and me? Go ahead and bury your dead." Without hesitation, Abraham weighed out the silver and handed it over, securing his first property in the Promised Land. The field of Ephron in Melah, facing Mamre, with the cave and all the trees within its borders, became Abraham's family bed. Abraham then laid his beloved wife Sarah to rest in that very cave, in the land of Canaan. This act marked his unwavering commitment to the land that God had promised him, a testament to his faith and loyalty. After Sarah's death, Abraham found solace in the companionship of Keturah, a woman he married, and together they had 6 more sons. Yet, as his family grew, an inner voice troubled him. What will become of Isaac? Abraham wondered. He needs a companion to carry on God's promise. Isaac's loneliness weighed heavily on his father's heart, and he knew that the promise of God would. Abraham summoned Eliezer, his faithful servant, and gave him a crucial task, to find a wife for Isaac. Swearing to carry out his master's mission, Eliezer set off on the journey, placing his hand under Abraham's thigh in a sacred oath. Eliezer arrived in the city of Nahor and paused by the well outside the town. It was the time when the women came to draw water. Then, out of the crowd, appeared a young woman of radiant beauty. Her name was Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel. Eliezer, astonished, approached her and asked, "Whose daughter?" "I am the daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah and Nahor," Rebekah. Eliezer, recognizing that she was from Abraham's own family, exclaimed, "Praise the Lord! Is there room in your father's house for us to stay?" "Of course," Rebekah replied. "We have space, and also feed for your camels at my father." Eliezer then shared his story, explaining that his master, Abraham, had sent him to find a wife for his son Isaac. "Rebekah is the chosen one," Laban, Rebekah's brother, and Bethuel agreed. "This is from the Lord. Take Rebekah." The next day, Eliezer prepared to return home. Isaac, meanwhile, was out in the field, meditating at sunset. When he looked up, he saw the camels approaching. Rebekah saw him too and asked, "Who is that man walking through the fields toward us?" "Is my master," Eliezer replied. Rebekah, knowing that her future was unfolding before her, took a veil and covered herself. As Isaac and Rebekah met, there was a moment of silent recognition. Isaac looked into Rebekah's eyes, and in that instant he knew that she was the one. "Rebekah," Isaac whispered softly, "you are welcome here." Rebekah lifted her gaze, and their eyes locked in an unspoken understanding. In that moment, a deep and abiding love was born between them, and Isaac knew in his heart that she was his chosen companion. Abraham, seeing his son filled with joy, felt his mission was complete. He had faced many trials, yet God's promise continued through Isaac and Rebekah. One afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the dunes, Abraham gathered his children around. "Father, tell us about God's promise," they asked eagerly, their eyes shining with excitement. Abraham smiled warmly and said, "God promised me that my descendants would be as numerous as the stars in the sky." Curious, Jan asked, "Are we also part of that promise?" "Yes, my children," Abraham replied, looking at each of them with love and conviction. "All of you are part of the plan that God has for." And so the legacy continued. Abraham's faith, tested and proven time and again, was now passed down to the next generation. Through Isaac and Rebekah, the promise of God would live on, a beacon of hope for future generations. As the years rolled on, Jan, Abraham's descendant, became the father of Sheba and Denin, further extending the lineage that God had promised. The camp was filled with the joyful sounds of children, a sign of God's blessings multiplying as foretold. Aware that his time on earth was drawing to a close, Abraham called his son Isaac to his side. With a calm yet determined voice, he said, "My son, I leave all my possessions to you. You are the son of the promise I had with Sarah. It is your duty to carry on the legacy that God has given us." Isaac, understanding the gravity of the moment, nodded solemnly. "I will honor your legacy, Father," he promised, knowing that the weight of God's promise now rested on his shoulders. Meanwhile, in far-off lands, Abraham's first son, Ishmael, the son of Hagar, heard the news of his father's impending death. Without a moment's hesitation, Ishmael set out to reunite with his family. Upon reaching the camp, Isaac was stunned to see his brother. "Ishmael? What are you doing here?" Isaac asked. Ishmael's voice was heavy with emotion as he replied, "I've come to say goodbye to our father." In his bed, Abraham felt the presence of his two sons. With a faint smile, he opened his eyes and saw them standing before him. His heart swelled with peace as he exhaled his final breath at 175 years old, ready to return to the Lord. Though Isaac and Ishmael had their differences, they set them aside in their final act for their father. Together they carried Abraham's body to the cave of Melah, the family tomb that Abraham had acquired as a resting place. As they laid their father to rest, Ishmael looked at Isaac and said, "After everything, we are brothers." Isaac, with a gentle smile, replied, "Indeed. Today we honor our father together." The desert wind whispered softly around them as the brothers realized something profound. Abraham's legacy was far more than the land and wealth he had amassed. It was a legacy of faith, obedience, and a steadfast trust in God's plan. As they left the cave, both brothers knew that their father's example would continue to guide future generations. It wasn't just his land they would inherit, but the faith that had driven him to give up everything for God's promise. As time passed, nations were born from Abraham's descendants, each star in the sky a reminder of God's covenant, each one representing the countless children of Abraham. His name became synonymous with faithfulness and obedience. Generations to come would revere him. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam would remember him as the father of all nations, the man who surrendered everything to follow a divine promise. Abraham's legacy didn't live on only in the memories of his children. It lived in the hearts of all people, a lasting testament to the power of trust in God's will. And while his story came to an end here, it didn't stop. The next chapter continues with his grandson Jacob, the chosen one of the Lord's promise. To learn more, click on the next video on your screen and remember to like and share this video with those who seek to walk in God's light. May God bless you. Dear brother, if you're going through a lot of troubles in life, we'd like to share with you 3 useful pieces of advice inspired by the content of this video. We hope embrace the call to leave comfort for growth. Sometimes life calls you to step out of your comfort zone, just as Abraham was asked to leave his native land. This call may come unexpectedly and challenge everything you know. While it may seem daunting at first, trust that these moments of discomfort are often where you will experience the most growth. Take the leap, knowing that the journey ahead holds faith in the unseen leads to unimaginable blessings. Abraham's faith in the promise he couldn't yet see is a powerful lesson. When you're faced with uncertainty, it's easy to doubt. But true faith comes when you trust in the promise and direction, even when you don't have all the answers. Often, the most significant blessings come when you believe, even without seeing the full picture. The importance of obedience, even when it's hard. When faced with tough decisions, like Abraham had with Isaac, obedience to a higher calling, even when it's difficult, is crucial. Abraham's unwavering faith in God's command, despite the pain, serves as a reminder that sometimes the right path requires sacrifices. Don't shy away from doing what's right, even when it's not easy. Trust in God's provision during uncertainty. Abraham trusted that God would provide, even when he didn't see the way ahead. Just as God provided a ram in place of Isaac, know that in times of uncertainty, God's provision will come at the right moment. Always trust that God will provide what you need when you need it most. Embrace challenges as opportunities to grow. Life will present many challenges, but it's important to view them as opportunities to grow. Just as Abraham faced famine, family disputes, and difficult choices, each of these situations taught him more about faith, leadership, and trust in God. When facing struggles, focus on what you can learn from them and how they can help you become a stronger, more resilient person. Generosity and humility lead to lasting relationships. When Abraham met with Abimelech, he showed generosity and humility by making an agreement with him. This act of loyalty and trust built a strong foundation for their relationship. In your own life, practicing humility and being generous with your time, resources, and kindness will create long-lasting relationships and open doors for mutual respect. Family bonds are strengthened by shared faith. Abraham's relationship with his sons Isaac and Ishmael was grounded in a shared faith, despite their differences. Even though they were raised in different circumstances, their faith and commitment to honoring Abraham brought them together in the end. Remember, faith can be a powerful force that unites family members. even through challenges and disagreements. Honor the legacy of those who came before you. Just as Abraham passed down the promise to Isaac and continued to honor the covenant made with God, it's essential to recognize the legacy of those who came before us. Whether it's through their values, their sacrifices, or their wisdom, remember that what you inherit is part of something much larger than yourself. Honor it by continuing to uphold the power of perseverance in the face of adversity. Abraham faced many obstacles, whether it was in the form of famine, conflict with Lot, or his own personal doubts. Yet he never gave up on God's promises. Perseverance in the face of adversity is essential for success in any area of life. Even when things seem impossible, hold on to the faith that perseverance will lead you to a greater purpose. Trust that God's plan will unfold in its time. Abraham's story reminds us that God's plan often takes time to unfold. What may seem like a long waiting period or an unanswered prayer is actually a part of the divine timing that will eventually bring forth incredible results. Trust that God is working behind the scenes and that, in His time, everything will fall into place according to His perfect plan. These lessons not only speak to the importance of faith and obedience, but also guide us in living a life of purpose, growth,